Look around any high-level field, and you'll notice a consistent pattern. True expertise is rare. Few people ever reach the top of their craft. It is tempting to look at that gap and blame genetics. We assume the people who didn't make it simply lacked the raw intelligence or the innate ability to keep up. But the data suggests a much more mundane reason for failure. Most people stop practicing because they encounter the steep, early friction of the learning curve and decide the effort isn't worth the discomfort. The primary barrier keeping people from the top isn't a lack of talent. It's a lack of endurance through those first few months of struggle. We live in a world optimized for speed. When we sit down to learn a new language or pick up an instrument, our brains expect fast results. When progress feels slow, we often take it as a sign that we aren't cut out for the task. This bias is reinforced when we watch the greats. We see an expert execute a flawless performance and assume they were naturally gifted. What we miss in that moment are the thousands of hours of unseen, repetitive labor, the endless, silent mistakes that happened long before they ever stepped into the spotlight. That polished brilliance is just the visible byproduct of a massive, invisible volume of work. To understand how that volume builds expertise, we have to look at the mechanics of practice. Skill building is the aggregation of tiny, repeated actions. If you dedicate one entire day to practicing intensely, your actual ability barely shifts. You might feel exhausted, but your brain hasn't had the time to rewire itself. This graph illustrates how approaches stack up over time. The trajectory with sharp spikes shows sporadic, intense bursts of effort, followed by inactivity. The other line is a steady daily focus. Stretch the timeline out, and that compounding slow effort eventually dwarfs the erratic spikes. Long-term change depends on how often you show up, not just how hard you work in a single afternoon. The most reliable way to maintain that frequency is to focus exclusively on becoming 1% better each day. This loop is how tiny improvements happen. Take action, analyze failures, make a micro-adjustment. Repeat. When initial excitement wears off and motivation disappears, the loop runs on mechanical discipline. During low-energy phases, just extract a tiny fraction of learning and keep the cycle spinning. Growth happens because you refuse to break the chain, regardless of how you feel about your performance on any given day. It helps to remember that every expert you admire began in a state of absolute incompetence. Feeling foolish and making messy errors doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It's the price of entry for anyone who wants to be great. The defining trait of most great achievements is that the creator stayed in that frustration and refused to walk away when things got difficult. When you choose not to quit during this phase, you are giving your skills the time they actually need to take root. Raw talent provides a head start, but without disciplined daily labor, that talent eventually hits a ceiling. This chart compares initial talent to accumulated effort. The static bar on the left relies on natural instinct. The segmented bar on the right represents average ability that stacks deliberate practice every single day. Over time, the volume of work overcomes the initial advantage. To let this process work, you have to cultivate patience. You have to trust the repetitions long before you can see the results in the mirror or on the page. If you hold that line, the day will arrive when you find yourself executing a complex sequence without thinking. You'll realize you've become the person you used to admire. Mastery is a practice of delayed gratification, the process of turning biological potential into permanent ability through sheer repetition.